is a long-time sales leader with a specialty of growing teams and revenue for smaller startup firms. He was awarded the accolade of UK Sales Director of the Year by BESMA, which stands for British Excellence in Sales Management Awards, and was listed in the top 50 sales keynote speakers by Top Sales World in 2019 and 2020. Ian has been a regular judge on the Women in Sales Awards, Visa, Top Sales Awards, BESMA, and the UK Cloud Awards. In today's episode, let us chat with him on how marginal gains will help in making big leap forward for your business. Interesting topic, isn't it? This is the Guiding Voice podcast series, the Guiding Voice for a Better Future. Friends, I'm your host Naveen Samala, just a fellow IT professional on a mission to shape the careers and lives of millions across the globe. Through the Guiding Voice, we drive conversations that matter, conversations that add value to your life and to your career. Successful leaders across the globe share their knowledge and wisdom through our platform, and our audience will acquire more knowledge by tuning into the Guiding Voice podcast per every minute than any other podcast in this space. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we are extremely pleased to have Ian part of our journey. Ian, I'm super excited to have you join me today. Hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice.
Navin, pleased to be here, and thank you for the opportunity and the invite. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to have you, Ian. And without further ado, let's jump into the conversation. Maybe can you briefly talk about your career journey with our audience?
Sure, and I'll keep it short because I'm sure people don't want to hear too much detail and hours of detail. But I started off as getting involved in technology way back when I was at school, and someone moved in locally and had a simple computer at the time, and I was just hooked. So originally I joined IBM as a programmer analyst, and I was a techie, programming and coding things. And then I saw an opportunity to join an inside sales role at a technology company. I knew nothing about sales, but I figured at that point in my head was, well, I know what I'm talking about. How hard can it be, right? And there's an opportunity to progress my career and earn more money and be more successful. So I joined as inside sales. I was promoted to field sales within 11 months, and I'm still a lot to learn, of course. And then over time, I went from being in field sales to managing people, and I would say I went to managing and then later on leadership. And I think there was a difference that comes from experience. And I'm still learning today, right? I'm a bag-carrying salesperson in some roles. When I join companies, I'm hands-on. I've managed large European teams and done a number of startups and helped them grow and progress their business.
Excellent. Seems to be quite an interesting journey because you started as a techie and now ended up in sales and coaching sales, and especially those in the startup world. And I'm really curious to understand the top 3 things that have helped you to be successful in your professional life so far.
Sure, and there's probably a lot, right? But simple ones, I think. Receptiveness to learning, to always be learning, always be looking for what don't you know, and learning from people around you and the people you meet, which is great in a customer-facing role because you get lots of opportunity to be in different scenarios. Tenacity, for sure. And with that comes the commitment and the work ethic, and I put those maybe as 2 things: tenacity, the willingness to keep going, but putting the hard work in. Certainly when I moved from being a more technology-led person to a sales side of the business, the one thing I did at that point was I realised, you know what, I don't know more than I know. I've been given the opportunity to be in sales. So I made up for that by working every hour that was possible to make, my view was if I put, let's pick a number, if I put an extra hour in a day, let's do it now. And this is sort of leads us into marginal gains a little bit. So small steps, right? If I did an hour a day more than the next salesperson, I get 5 hours a week, 20 hours a month, multiply it up, 200 hours a year, figure out how much extra selling time I get simply by doing that. Now, if they're better than me at sales, do I make up for it by just putting some more effort in? Do I balance that out a little bit? And if I then continue to learn, if I use that extra hour a day perhaps to learn, how much better am I at the end of a year? How much better am I for next year? And I still put an hour in, so it's more productive. So it's that doing lots of small things repeatedly that makes a big difference.
Doing a lot of small things repeatedly makes a lot of difference. I think this ties back with your power of marginal gains. So how do we explain this power of marginal gains to the layman?
Sure. And I sort of led into an example before you asked that question, right? But so I started doing this thing, marginal gains, before realizing what it was, or even that it was called that. But with hindsight now, what's the best example where this was used? So where this is spoken about the most, and the biggest example that I've come across is the British cycling team was sort of doing okay, but they had a new coach come in and a new team. To how are we going to make them be better? And they couldn't. There was no epiphany. There was no, and I say this in sales, and we'll give that example in a second, but there wasn't anything that person coming in could do that was going to be a massive changing event, right? That people hadn't done before. There wasn't, oh my gosh, I can just do this and we're going to be 10 times better. But what he did is he looked at the whole ethos of cycling, all the components of being successful, and identified all those components, lots of small things, and then said, right, if we can move the dial, marginally move the dial on each of those, or as many of them as is possible, they compound to a far greater outcome. So, for example, you can't change the tyres or whatever, but he realised one of the examples was, well, at the beginning of one of those track cycling races, the tyres are cold, so you have less grip, so you can go slightly slower. If we can heat the tyres, we warm the tyres up before we start the race, do we not gain a marginal on that first lap and that first couple of laps? If we can change the pedals slightly to take a little bit of weight out, and he did that again and again and again, looked at everything and said, what could we do differently here that's a very small thing and make a small difference? But because he did that, all of those things came together and they won gold medal after gold medal after gold medal. So it was, the whole concept is not trying to change the world, not trying to climb Everest, the mountain. It's what small things, what small steps can we take that are achievable, that people believe in. Right? So when I join a company, first thing I do is assimilate what's going on. What are the metrics that are important in sales? Right? What's the average deal value? What's the momentum? What's the win ratio? What's the loss? How many do we win? What's the average? Because the whole goal, of course, of me coming in as a sales leader is, well, I'm going to move the dial. We want to get better results. But I don't have this golden key that magically says I can come in and tell you how to do one thing, this one magical thing that's a secret that no one's ever figured out before, that only I know. No, what it's about is I look at all of the metrics and what's going on today, and I look for where can we make small improvements. So, for example, if the average transaction value is £5,200, okay, what I'm not going to do is say to them, great, let's make that £50,000 next month. Where's that coming from? What I'm looking at is assimilating what's gone on and figuring out what is an achievable amount. Is it £6,000 or is it 7,000? And what do we want to do over the next 3 months, 6, 9, 12? So it isn't setting something that the salespeople can't buy into. It's guys, okay, guys and girls, we're doing 5,000 average deal value. Here's some things I've seen that we could do better with a goal to get our average deal value to £6,000 by the end of this quarter. Do we think that's achievable? And if you've assimilated stuff, you've got to pick your numbers and make it relative. I'm using a virtual example. Is people are going to go, yeah, we could push for that. Now, if at the end of that you've moved that dial, you've just got an increase in your average deal value, right? So even doing the same number of transactions, you're better off in performance than you were the previous quarter. And then it's how do we get that from 6,000 to 7,000, or 7 to 8 to 10, etc. Do we change the structure of the pricing? There's lots of things that might contribute to this. The sale of execution. If I can make you marginally better in your opening statement or your value statement or something, whatever, there are all these different things you can change. If I can improve it slightly, is it not going to have an impact on the customer that could mean we win one more deal a quarter? So how many deals do we win a month, a quarter, a week, a day, depending on the type of business? What's the average deal value? What's the win rate? We win 1 in 5. Okay. Do you think by doing some change, we could get to 1 in 4? Not 1 in 2. Let's be realistic. Let's try and move the dial to 1 in 4. by better qualifying the deals, by better change marketing maybe, so that we take out a lot of the noise of stuff we're getting that isn't appropriate, we're wasting time on, so we can spend more time on the ones that we do win. What's our ideal customer look like? Well, let's focus more on that than this noise we're getting perhaps, and get less leads, but get more that are appropriate, that we have a higher win rate in. So if you can do that, think about this. It's, you move the deal value up a little bit over the first quarter, you increase the win rate. Okay, so with less effort, more effectiveness, you're going to get a better performance, a better outcome, a better number. But there's no magic to it. It's about identifying small changes you can make, and lots of them, that all compound to give you a better result. And also to get the people involved buy in and believe it's achievable, because they're the ones that have to deliver those changes, right? And those changes can come through change of process, can come through just understanding something differently and focusing on different things. It isn't just, it can be through coaching. It's a combination of different things to achieve the identified changes that are going to make a difference, to move the relevant dials, a number of them, that then compound together to give you a better result. That's what marginal gains is about. It's about not trying to climb the mountain of Everest and say, right, guys, we're climbing Everest. It's about saying, right, today we're going to get to base camp. We're going to walk to this point. Okay, tomorrow we're going to do this much climbing, and we're going to put one foot in front of the other, and we're going to get this far. It's breaking it down into smaller things that are achievable. So I might say to a team, we're going to increase the deal value. The target in Q1 is to get it to 6K. I think in Q2, we're going to target to get it to 7.5, Q3, and I'm making this up as an example, obviously, with a goal that at the end of the year, we've doubled the average deal value. And this is how I think we can do it. And we're going to change some things here and whatever, and getting people to buy. Now, here's what often happens. Some of the marginal target things you've identified, you hit far quicker. So the first quarter, you don't get to 6K average deal value, you get to 6.8. You're not going to get to 20, but you get to a higher number on the journey. But another one, like the win ratio, maybe you didn't get to 4 out of 1, you got to 4.7 out of 5 instead of 4 out of 5. So, and that's natural. But it doesn't matter, because what you've done is said, we're going to step the game up in small ways and all these things. We're going to improve ourselves in all the areas. Let's identify all the things that contribute to this. Let's all brainstorm. Some of it comes from my experience sometimes, that things I've done in the past, and I can see things. But I encourage everyone, because everyone's had a different journey and experience. Team, you've been here this long. What would you do to increase this, or to mean that our average close isn't 60 days? We can bring that down to 50 days. What would you do that means we can close it quicker? Oh, well, the problem we get is when we try and get a configuration from the engineering team, it always delays us 10 days. Okay, so if we could reduce that by a margin, maybe it's 8 days average instead of 10, that would contribute towards closing it quicker. What else? So it isn't just coming from yourself. It's about cultivating and pulling out from people ideas that can contribute towards small gains. And most people have those in their head, right? If you ask them for, tell me, Joe, tell me, Sally, how do we get our deal value from 10K to 50K? Right. But if you say, how could we move it from 10 to 11? Most people come up with lots of small ideas, because it feels like it's achievable, and small things will have an impact. Yeah. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. You can execute against marginal gains far quicker. People will believe in them. People will commit to them. And it's far easier to deliver them. And it works. I've done it in company after company. It works.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I love the concept. I can relate that to the field that I am in, the business transformation, implementing Lean Six Sigma and all. We have a concept called Kaizen, which is small improvement. Like we recommend people to focus on small improvements and repeatedly do that, so that they can achieve or strive towards perfection. And it makes absolute sense to me. And as you said, it will not scare, in case if you are giving highest target, which is sounds so scary and all, compared to small target, which is kind of incremental, people would come up with a lot of ideas. Yeah, very well explained. Thank you for those details. Let's talk about this aspect. Sell more with less margin versus sell less with huge margin. And which one is suitable for what type of business or service?
Yeah, I think both have their place, right? It depends on the nature of your business, and it depends on. Yeah, I often talk to businesses I've seen businesses who want to sell in volume. they've got a great technology and they want to go mass with it. And when I've looked and assimilated what the challenges are, sometimes it's not to do with the product or whatever. It's typically to do with how frictionless you can engage with your customers. Because if you're going to deal, if you're going to do low margin, right, you need volume. There's a difference. It comes with the lower the margin you've got, the more volume you need to achieve because you're operating on such a small margin. But to do that, you've got to be efficient because the cost in your business at low margin doesn't warrant you. For example, if I'm selling a software product which I need to demonstrate, and the average transaction value is $30, and I need to demonstrate it every time and then have multiple calls with them, it doesn't work. That needs to be a self-serve model with automated videos, with automated self-help, with self-provisioning, where the customer can come to a website, look at it, learn stuff, not have to speak to anyone. You might have live chat. You might facilitate something like that where an agent can do 5 or 6 live chats at the same time, but the live chats are the exception, not the rule. So they're there to support when needed, but you reduce them by self-serve. If you can't do that, you've got to move up the margin chain, right? And it doesn't mean it has to be high margin, but you've got to get the balance right, and decide where does the solution or service you have fit, and what type of customer does it address, and how are you going to deliver it. So you might have a product or service that can address big companies and transactional small companies, and you might say, well, look, we're going to go after everything. Well, you can't treat them all the same. If you're going to go after the mass market, and the more you go down that, the bigger market, which is the long tail of the smaller transactions, you've got to have it in a self-serve model. The further you get to that, the more self-serve and frictionless it's got to be for you and the customer. You can't have manual processes. You can't have it that they submit a form and then someone has to do a load of manual work, because you can't scale it. Because every time you hit a certain threshold, you need to employ more people. You've got to use automation. The more you move up the margin chain, the more you can afford to have the personal touch, to have humans involved, to have me jumping on, talking to you like this, and etc. And doing a demonstration, and then you wanting another demonstration to the senior execs in your team. Well, does that justify? And I've been a non-exec in a number of companies where I've talked them through this and just got them in a room and pushed them hard on, where do you play? Because too many people say, well, where's your product fit or service fit? Oh, we could sell to anyone. Okay, you could, but how are you going to scale your business? Where's your sweet spot? And it might be the mid-market. It might be not mass market. It might be very transactional, or it might be few deals a year, but high, selectively winning those larger deals at high margin, as you indicate. You don't have to serve all of them just because your product could serve them. It's got to be down to what the processes are and how frictionless, and how efficient you can be. And that will determine where you fit. Otherwise, what ends up happening, I've seen this, is I've joined a number of businesses where one of my goals has been, they haven't been quite in the full transactional model, but they've been doing a lot of small deals. And I've looked at it and gone, it's got you where you are, but if you want to scale this business, we've got to move up the average deal value has got to move up, guys. And at some point, you've got to draw a line and say anything below, and I'll pull something out of the software world, anything below 10 seats, 10 licenses, you don't transact. So you might say, okay, our minimum license is 10. Whereas previously you might have been selling a 3 license, a 2, a 4, a 5, a 1. Problem with that is those smaller businesses, you've still got to support them. And often what a business has done is set up in a model that is generic, so it will support any customer the same. So everyone can phone in and get support. If you've got a customer who's bought 3 licenses off you at a value, but gets the same level of support, and I get why in a startup company you want to help everyone and be great, and your reputation, but you can't afford to service a 3-user business like a 300-user customer. You can't. A 300-user customer spent a lot more money with you, so you have to categorize customers, categorize what interaction they get, what level of support they get, what costs they can impose on your business relative to the investment they make in your business. Or you automate, right? You can't, if you can have automated self-help support for those smaller companies, maybe you have that for the smaller business. But you've got to handle this. You've got to have a pragmatic and proactive way of addressing this. You cannot just trundle along. So I've helped a lot of businesses move their average deal value up, structure their customer profiling, and structure what services and what you do and don't give to customers, and to make them more efficient, therefore to be able to scale the business.
That's great. I loved all the insights shared. And moving to my next question, again, this is tying back to the marginal gains, right? In general, what
Sure.
are the metrics that we should focus on while working on improving the marginal gains?
Sure, and it will vary business to business, but the common ones, and I think I've already mentioned, but let's be clear about them, is the average deal value, and how, as I've just mentioned, and how you and the cost of sale to service that, and that's from the full life cycle from quote to cash. Because if you're doing, let me cite that one. If you're doing small deal values and you're invoicing them and chasing money on them and everything at the cash point, that's going to cost the business. Often businesses find that the average deal value, there's a point where it's costing them more to transact than the value of the deal. So if that customer doesn't renew with them in year 2 and 3, by the time they've paid out sales commissions and the cost of sale of onboarding that customer, they've lost money in year 1. That's a common problem businesses face when they actually assimilate this. So what is the average deal value? The win rate is absolutely a critical one. And that falls into the discussion, which is a whole another area around sales and marketing conflict. Marketing is often targeted to generate as many leads as they can, pump them to sales, and sales is targeted to close them. Well, is marketing aligned with sales to give them the right profile of lead? As a sales leader, I don't want marketing to give me 500 leads unless all 500 leads meet my ideal customer profile. And you've got to define that. Who is the best type of customer I sell to? And that might be they're in a certain vertical or multiple vertical industries. And I don't know, customers who are in XYZ industry are really bad for us because we lose 9 out of 10 of them. There might be a reason for that, right? But don't give me 100 of those leads in an industry where 9 out of 10 of them I lose because we don't have certain metrics, or we have a competitor in that industry who has some things that industry wants that we don't. Let's identify, where do we win the best and serve the customer best? What's our ideal customer profile? And marketing, give me people who meet that. Give me 500 of those leads or 100 of those leads, fantastic. Don't give me 500 leads where only 100 of them are in my ICP, because that will mean a couple of things. One, that my win rate will not be as best as it can be. 2, we'll be burning an awful lot of sales cycles and effort, potentially speaking to people to tick a box in the CRM back to marketing that sales did its job. I don't want marketing complaining that we've put these leads over, oh, they haven't been followed up properly, or you're not closing a good ratio. You should be working together, right, to maximize the efficiency of your win rate. Because if you give me all the ones and I'm my win rate there, that's the easiest way of moving your win rate up. If my win rate is 1 in 6 and I can move it to 2 in 4 or 2 in 5, guess what? We generate more revenue and work with them to identify the size of customer you want as part of the ICP, the ideal customer profile. Because if you give me more 30, making this up, 30 user opportunities than 5 user ones, guess what? The average deal value got better. If they're my ICP, my win rate goes up, 30 user deals, sales is better off, we put more effort in. I always ask salespeople, right, if you win a smaller deal and you've put a ton of effort in, are you high-fiving and ringing the bell and celebrating? No. What you're doing is taking you're relieved because of all the effort you put in, you're just relieved, thank God for that. Because if you'd lost it, what a waste of time. If you win a larger one, yeah, you do high five, right? That should tell you something, where you focus your time. So that win rate. The other one would be the momentum of the deal. What's our average time on different types of customer to win? If it takes us on average 63 days from first interaction of a lead to close a deal, what's causing that? Is it internal process? Is it sales execution? Is it lack of sales tools for the salespeople? Something causing it. How do we reduce that as a marginal gain? And it might, perfect world is you reduce it down to a day, right? Everyone would love that. Is you get a lead and you get the order next day. But what's realistic? If it's 63 days, if I can reduce it to pick a number out of the air, 50 days, it means we're doing quote to cash quicker. We're collecting cash quicker. Therefore, if you go 50 days, the further you move in, you've closed more deals sooner. So your numbers go up quicker, right? So it's a combination of all these metrics, and there'll be different metrics in different businesses, right? Churn rate's an important one to look at, because if you're churning customers, the bucket's leaking while you're pouring water into it, it's leaking at the bottom. I'd suggest you fix the leak at the bottom, because all you're doing is putting effort in to lose them later. So that's another important metric to look at. What's your churn rate? So there's lots of metrics you can look at. How many touches does it take on average? How many demos does it take if that's relevant to your business on average? How many customer visits does it take? How can you reduce each of the metrics where applicable? The perfect world is one phone call with the customer, it's great, and they place an order. But if your product has to be demoed, don't create a false metric or a false target, a marginal gain, to say we want to try and have lots of wins with no demos. If that's part of it, that's fine. But if your average is you have to do 5 demos per client, why is that? Can we reduce it to 4? Because that has a impact on the salesperson, on the business, on the engineer, or whoever does it, right? How do we create a more efficient model? Sometimes things, you can't reduce it. Don't reduce it for the sake of doing it and break something, right? It might be that one of those metrics takes that much effort because that's why you win the deals, because your competition will only ever give 1 demo. But because you will give 2 or 3, that is one of the metrics that's saying that's where you have your win rate. So you've got to listen to your salespeople and listen to your customers and figure out, don't just treat it as a numbers game. You've got to really assimilate and understand your business and all the metrics, and then figure out from those learnings and have conversations with people and figure out, what can we tune? Don't do it explicitly that you've got to move every metric. Do the ones that are the correct ones to move, and then focus on them, make it small steps, and then all work together in the same direction.
Quite informative. And now let's talk about your journey as a sales leader. And you happen to coach and mentor a lot of startups in this area. So what are some common mistakes that people in sales are making, and how can they avoid in order to get benefit of these marginal gains?
Sure. So what I guess as sales coaching, execution, sales skills, the biggest marginal gain that I see consistently that I would pick on from a sales leader point of view in terms of a sales mistake would be questioning. You talk to salespeople, anyone that's been doing sales for a while, and I interview a lot of salespeople. As you mentioned, some of the awards where I judge and have the benefit to interview a lot of salespeople who are up for awards and in that process. But I also interview a lot of salespeople who are looking at interviewing as part of a job process. It's interesting when I ask them, simple things. Where do you think you could be better? What skills would you like to expand on, or get training on, or be coached on? Give me a feel. The common things that come up are complex stuff. Well, I'd like to know more about enterprise negotiation skills. They come up with all these illustrious things. Very rarely does someone say, I really want to be better, and they name any of the basics. And for me, it's questioning. Most salespeople, I think, are average. And apologies to anyone listening, but a lot of people listening will say, that's not me. And unfortunately, some of those people it will be, is questioning. Okay, because salespeople have been taught methodologies which are fundamentally okay, but how they execute them or interpret them is not. So there's loads. BANT, Scotsman, Spin, TAS. I can challenge a sale and keep going on and on and on. But if we take BANT, not for any particular reason, just that it's simple to quickly describe as an example, budget, authority, need, time scale. So salespeople are taught, you need to find these things out, and this is why, and here's questions to ask, right? And invariably, what I've seen is salespeople will, in their own way, ask you, Navin, as a prospective client, they go, Navin, what sort of budget have you got for this? And Navin says, well, I've got 17.5K for this. Write that down. And when are you looking to get it done by? When are you looking to get this project in by? Well, we're thinking, by end of November. So they ask those sort of questions. I'll get the details, and great, I've done a good job, right? I always position to them, okay, so if I know 10 things more about the customer's details and information, key information, do you think I'm in a better place to win? Or to decide to not play, to qualify myself out and not waste my time? Well, yeah, you are. If I know 20 more things, better? Yeah. Okay, so Navin, that budget of 17.5K, help me understand why that number? Where's that number come from? Oh, well, that's because that's what we spent on the last product that we use, and we're looking to change. What was the last product, Navin? And why are you looking to change it? Okay, but if you find something, so you've illustrated there's some challenges with it. It doesn't fit your business. It's not helping you scale now what you need to do. If the solution to help you achieve what you're trying to achieve, the reason you're changing is and you've told me, great. And that's going to have a bit what impact on your business of this. If the solution to do that costs more than 17.5K, does that mean you wouldn't choose it? No, not at all. Okay. So guess what happens? One salesman goes back and tries to quote or configure their solution around a 17.5K budget. I come back to you and it might be a 40K budget event because I've discussed it with you and I can illustrate with you the value I've got to achieve the goal while you're doing this. And I'm not worried about you said it's 17.5K because I've said to you in the meeting, look, Navin, I think we're going to end up being 30, 35, 40K. Is that going to scare you off? Because if it does, tell me now. But I'm not going to discount my product to 17.5. But tell me now, because I think we can do what you want, that going to have that impact and grow your business by the 20% you need next year, make you successful and make you a champion for this. I think we can do that. Are we still in the game? Yeah, we can still do that. Great. Salesman A finds out 6 months or 3 months, whenever it is down the line, and has to explain to his boss why competitors want it. It was always more expensive than you. Why does that happen? What did I do differently? All I did was ask more questions, right? When you said the time scale, we want it in by the end of November. Then if it doesn't happen by the end of November, what happens? What's the consequence? Oh, well, this and this and this. So it could, has it slipped before? Yeah, it could. Yeah, we looked at it, but great. I know stuff now different. The more I know that the competition doesn't know, I'm in a better place. It may not mean I win the deal. It may mean I actually say to you, Navin, we're not the right solution for you. I don't want to waste your and our time by coming down and seeing you because this is the reason being, right? But that's professional selling and that's fundamentally a basic. I've just coached you on how to do it, right? It needs more coaching than that, but the number of salespeople that don't do that. And I've constantly, with my salespeople, they'll come in and I've got one who's worked for me many times before. And I remember many a time when he would come into the office and say, great, and I'd say something to him like that. And I'd say, well, but why are they looking to do it then? And he'd tell me. He'd go, no, I knew you were going to ask that. Tell me the answer, right? And I'd ask another question. I'd unpeel the onion again. He'd answer it. And then I'd ask another one. He'd go, oh, all right. Because I'll coach them by asking them about an opportunity and ask the next question. And often what happened, the salesperson will go, got it. Oh, okay, there's another one. That's great. Here's the next thing salespeople don't do as a final point on this matter. So there's something they miss. Go and phone the customer back and say, Dave, we had that conversation. I met with you yesterday. I hope you don't mind. I have made a mistake. I'd like to apologize. What? I'd like to apologize because I should have asked something and I didn't ask it. Do you know what they're going to say to you? You don't need to apologize. What's the question? And you ask the question and get the answer. I should have asked this. You said this. I've been going, Navin, I've been going through my notes. I've looked through my notes from our meeting yesterday. And apologies, but I should have asked you. There's a couple of things I should have asked you that I didn't ask. And they're going to let you ask it, right? And they're also going to think, wow, this person's more professional than the others because not only have they asked more questions in the first meeting and challenged me and been more interested, but they've come back to me when they've realized there's some other stuff they should ask. They're really keen on doing the right thing for me. And I've got another time to interact with the customer. I've had salespeople go, oh, I couldn't, when they realize they missed something, they have no thought to phone them back and ask again. It's like, why? I met with them yesterday. Oh, I should have asked that. Yeah. We'll go and fix it. You met with them, right? Or you had a call with them. They're going to let you speak with them, particularly if you say, I want to apologize because I've let myself down. What? I should have asked you the question then. It's professional. It's so basic. And that's a marginal gain you can get easily across every salesperson in your business.
Fantastic. All right. So this has been fabulous conversation so far, but let's add some spice to the episode. I'm going to kick off a quick rapid fire round with your consent, Ian.
Okay, go on.
All you need to do is just answer them crisply in a word or a maximum one phrase. And
Okay.
All right. So let me move ahead with the first bullet. What was your childhood fantasy, Ian?
Okay, well, the job I wanted to have when I was a child was I wanted to be a stuntman in the movies. I loved skateboarding and stuff like that, and seeing what they did in the movies. And yeah, that would be my answer to that one.
Interesting. What is one best piece of advice that you have received so far?
Okay, that's an easy one. I've spoken about this before. And I remember my sales leader boss that said this to me, and the circumstance was, don't boil the ocean. Don't try and do everything to the best degree. I'd run around and try and do everything. He said, look, because he used to get 1,000 emails a day, right, from everyone, because he was very accessible. And he said, here's what I do. I focus on the ones that matter, and I delete my. He was extreme. He said, every month I delete my inbox, and if it's important, I'll send it again. Right? I can't deal with everything. I can't touch everything.
Yeah.
So I pick the things that are most important. They're here. Everything else is noise, and I get that done.
Yeah.
When that's done, I can look at other stuff. But I focus on the important things. I don't try and boil the ocean. I don't try and do everything and get nothing done.
Yeah. That is a powerful one. And moving to the next question, what is one life-changing incident that changed your perspective, Jan?
I think, there's a few I could do here. I would say the death of my first son as a stillborn, because it made you realise straight away work didn't matter, right? Work wasn't important. And it made me realise the life balance and that family is important, and work is work.
What is one must-read book from your side that you recommend?
Okay, I'm going to pick one from actually a friend, an author, a friend of mine that I got to know is Social Selling by a guy called Tim Hughes. The world of selling has changed, and that's about how the biodynamic has changed. And it's very readable, very digestible, and you just get it, right? It's not rocket science, but for most salespeople, it gives them a few angles and thoughts that they hadn't had before from the traditional salesman.
Oh, sure. Social selling, right? That's great rapid fire so far. And let me find the last bullet. What is one electronic gadget that you'd like to see or invent yourself?
Something, and I don't know how it would format itself, but something that would better protect and manage and control children on electronic devices. The bane of my life is seeing, our kids have electronic devices when they get to a certain age, but not all the time, right? And certainly on holidays, sat at the dinner table, they are not there on their phone. They're interacting with us and socializing and talking, or we're playing a card game, or they're drawing. It's something that could better protect children from the applications on phones and the usage levels. I know there's tools on there, but I don't think they're good enough today.
Yeah.
I think we hear too many horror stories in that area that proves that, right? There needs to be better responsibility from the tech providers to enable parental control or AI control to protect children from all the stuff that goes on.
Indeed, it is a universal problem, and definitely, if somebody can come with a solution, that would help immensely. All right, that was great rapid fire round, and let us flip back to the mainstream. And before I let you go, one final question for today's conversation, Ian. What will be your one piece of advice to those aspiring to make big in their careers or lives? You can pick either of them.
The biggest one for me, I guess, is tenacity and work ethic. Because I've always said, when you don't, I'm still learning, right? I'm still learning stuff today, even though I've been doing what I do a long time, and I still work hard. It's not taking it for granted, right? It is you creating your own destiny. And too often, I hear people. Here's a phrase I've learned over the years. Too often, I hear people who will say, I'm not doing that. I'm not working harder until they pay me to do it. I'm not doing that because I'm not paid enough. Well, guess what? It's a vicious loop. You probably never will be, because I've heard lots of examples and I've witnessed it where someone works harder than they should do, right? And you look at it and go, well, why are they putting that effort in? Why are they making all that effort? Why are they standing out? And why aren't they just doing what all the others do and just turning the chain? Well, guess what? When an opportunity comes, guess who's spotted? Guess who gets given that opportunity? And then the others moan about, well, that's not fair. Why do they get it? Right? It's you create your own. You never know who's watching. You never know who's going to see you doing something. I heard a story. I'll finish on this. I heard a story recently where someone in business saw someone that kept going into a coffee shop and saw a young lady in there and was always more interactive with the clients, more cheerful, going the extra mile. And he employed her. He took her out of that business into another business because he said, I'm going to give her an opportunity. She doesn't know this other job, but I'm going to see if she wants the opportunity, because look at this. She shone out, right? So an opportunity came to her, not because she didn't know who anyone was, but because she made the best of her job and worked harder than the other people around her and interacted with customers, and she put the effort in, right? You see these people all the time that they're going to stand out and they're going to achieve, and that's your choice to do that or not to do that.
All right. Yeah. That's wonderful advice. And Ian, thank you so much for joining me today. And it is absolute pleasure to have you as a guest speaker on our show. Thank you for your time and for all the wonderful insights shared. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Navin. Appreciate it.
All right. So, folks, before we move into the trivia section, here is a small request to you. In case if you haven't subscribed to us, please subscribe from the app where you have tuned in from. Also, if you have loved this episode and enjoyed the conversation, request you to share with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues who can benefit from the guiding voice. All right. Now, let's jump into the trivia segment of today's episode. Today, we had a fascinating conversation about unleashing the power of marginal gains. And Ian has shared a lot of tips based on his experience as a sales leader and all. I would like to close this episode by sharing 2 more tips related to sales. First one is being 30 to 50% of the sales go to the vendor that responds first, which means responsiveness is a key skill in sales. But we need to keep in mind that speed alone is not good enough. We have to be quick while providing a quality response, which means we cannot take a risk of not answering all the prospective questions. All right. Now, the second one is 80% of the sales require 5 follow-up calls after the meeting. But 44% of the sales reps give up after their first follow-up. And just because you have got a foot in the door, that doesn't mean that you have closed the sale. We have to be persistent and do everything you can to stay connected with the prospect post your initial meeting. Then you can win the deals. Likewise, you might have many sales tips. And in case if you have any profound advice, please comment on the social media platforms where you have found this episode, or you can comment on the YouTube video. In addition to that, you can also reach out to me through social media or email me at theguidingvoiceforyou@gmail.com. In addition to that, if you have any speaker recommendations or topic suggestions, feel free to reach out. That's all for today. And thank you so much for joining me. Friends, I'm your host, Navin Samala, just a fellow IT professional on a mission to shape the careers and lives of millions across the globe. Until next time, bye-bye. See you all in the next episode.